Good afternoon and welcome to another Umbrella Hangout. Now today we're joined by Charmaine Moldrich, who's the CEO of the OMA. Charmaine joined the OMA in 2010 as CEO and was previously a marketer with a long stint at the Historic Houses Trust and 2 years with the Sydney Harbour Foreshore Authority as well, amongst several other jobs you've done in between times. Thank you very much for joining us today, Charmaine.
It's a pleasure to be here, Alex.
So OMA, obviously, Outdoor Media Association, I guess easiest question to start with is who are you and what do you do and who are your members?
Okay, so we represent all of the outdoor operators who sell out-of-home advertising.
Mm-hmm.
We also represent some ancillary members who provide services to those members, like printers and installers and people who supply computer programs to those businesses. So we've got in total 34 members. We have 4 members that are large members that everyone would know, APN, O, JC-Deco, AdShell. And we have, I think that the membership is divided half and half. So 18 members who are media display members and the others ancillary members. So we're not a huge media association, but we represent possibly 90% of the outdoor industry. And that 90% generates about $600 million in revenue. So
it's targeted, but
it's growing. And what we do at the Outdoor Media Association, I suppose, is we provide 4 really essential services to our members. The first one is audience measurement and research. So audience measurement through Move and evidence-based research that we use to show how well the channel works.
Mm-hmm.
ROI research, who's looking at the ads, research that is useful for government, what the public think about what we do. So we do a whole suite of research. We're very concerned about being evidence-based, and Move certainly was the big project, the Herculean project we did in that area.
And Move's the outdoor measurement sort of
absolutely
metric that you introduced. How long has that been in?
5 years.
5 years
that
now.
gives you reach and frequency. So that's the kind of jewel in our crown. The second thing that we do is we provide marketing services to our members. So as an industry, we market how well the channel does. And I suppose the most recent marketing program that we did was our Open 2 book on creative. We also did a summer campaign to encourage customers to advertise in summer because more people are outdoors in summer.
Which makes sense.
And we've done some research that tells us that more people are not only outdoors, but they also look at ads in summer. So that's the kind of marketing promotion end that we do that enhances, I suppose, and supports the audience measurement part of our business. Then the third thing that we do, which probably doesn't have as much impact to a wide selection of people, but it's very targeted, and that's government relations. So we work at a federal level, at state levels, and at local government levels. And we also look at how self-regulation is operating. We look at what the community feedback is. We write policy, we write guidelines. We manage that area of an industry relationship with government.
Right.
And that actually can be quite nuanced and subtle. It can go from advocacy and education to straight out lobbying. And the fourth thing that we provide our members is really heritage and historic reference and data. So we collect all of the industry data. The association's been operating since 1939.
Right.
So we're going to be 80 in 2019.
Is that the oldest association?
I don't know. It's the oldest one, but it's pretty old.
It's one of the first forms of advertising, I suppose, isn't it?
And it's changed a lot, as you can imagine. I've got a photo in the boardroom of the first conference that the association had in the 1950s. And it's in a theatre, in a rake theatre, and there are all of these very nicely dressed white men in dark suits. And then there's one woman who obviously is the secretary. So very different because there's now a woman leading the association.
Sounds quite Mad Men.
It is very Mad Men, very suave.
Quite stereotypical of the time, possibly. Okay, so I mean, you talked about sort of lobbying there and governments and so on. Now, sort of 18 months ago, there was a bit of a hoo-ha, I guess, in Queensland, with the government inquiry in Queensland into sort of sexualisation on billboards. What was that about, and what was sort of the outcome of that? Because I know there was press coverage at the start of it, but nothing really seemed to come of the the inquiry itself.
Yeah, and that's a good thing. Because there was nothing to come out of it. It was, as you so well put it, a hoo-ha. I think that with outdoor advertising, what is really apparent to me is because it's ubiquitous and because it's on 24/7, you have to really take into consideration a wide range of opinions and views. And the Queensland Inquiry was really propelled by two groups. Collective Shout, which is a feminist group, and the Australian Christian Lobby. And their beef was that there were ads for sex clubs that they saw as being sexualized. Now, we don't, as the outdoor industry and as part of self-regulation, we don't actually make value judgments about what's out there. What we do is, how do people then advertise that? How does that advertising work in terms of self-regulation?
Mm-hmm.
So I can't make a moral judgment about sex clubs or women's magazines or about any of those things. The only thing that's banned in Australia is tobacco advertising. Everything else is, everyone has a legal right to advertise their business, to put their shingle outside and say, come in and buy this. So what we actually look at is how they then advertise it. And there are ways in which sex clubs can advertise. We understand that, billboards can be quite overwhelming, and we have to take that into consideration. So while the inquiry in Queensland, I thought, was a little bit of a red herring, and, we gave evidence, we showed the numbers. So if I give you some numbers.
Yeah.
On average, the outdoor industry in Australia will run 30,000 ad campaigns. We had one breach in the area of sex, sexuality and nudity last year. That doesn't even rate as a percentage.
And that's with the Ad Standards Board, is it?
The breach. The Ad Standards Board. So we've had complaints, and I actually think that complaints are really great because it shows that the system's working. But I found the Queensland Inquiry to be a little bit of, going over old territory, and people were showing ads at the inquiry that we ran in 2000 that you would never run now.
Right.
Things have changed, self-regulation has tightened. We have actually done a lot in this sphere as well in terms of education and training. But, those things are always really great because what you do get is you get to give your point of view, and you get to educate people along the way. So I kind of say to people, look, it's pretty hard to find a sexualized billboard in Australia at the moment.
Yeah.
You'd be hard pressed to find one, and if people viewing do, then send it to me.
No, it's interesting, I think, because I think there's then a question of location of billboards. There are obviously some places, and the point's often made, especially to the ASB when it's Wicked Campers coming up. Obviously not a member of yours, but sort of outdoor advertising in a way, with the slogans on the side of their boards, their vans. That you can't control where you are when you see them. Ads are there, especially outdoor ads. You can run ads for certain services late at night on TV, or radio, on certain websites, whatever. The children aren't necessarily going to be present on or watching. But outdoor obviously is pervasive, and that's how you want it, I guess, because that's how you sort of sell the industry. But having an ad for a sex club or a strip club or something like that near a school, for example, I think that's something that's caused a stink in the past. I mean, does there need to be more sensitivity maybe around placement of some of these adverts and that kind of thing?
I think, there's three things that I would say to that. Is I totally agree. Placement, common sense. Usually these things are about common sense. So while outdoor is ubiquitous and it can't be turned off, there's regulation that regulates the way that content is broadcast, and the ASB look at it understanding that the audience is a general audience. Yeah, so they actually take that into consideration.
Yeah.
So that's the first point. The second point is, in a way, in a democracy, you have to take the good with the bad. So, you know, your kids do walk past the sex shop with its window.
Yeah.
It's got its shingle out there. You can't really, I don't think, and this is a Todd Sampson quote, in a way, he says, you can't really world-proof the world for your children. You know, you can't child-proof it.
Yeah.
You have to world-proof your children. So I got that slightly wrong. So you can't child-proof the world, you have to world-proof your kids. But that's not to say that, you know, we are willy-nilly taking this kind of material. We think about this very, very seriously, and there are rules and regulations around it, and we follow those rules and regulations.
So that's, yeah, I mean, that's interesting, I think, you know, because moving on from the sexualised side of things, there was an issue last year running up to the Melbourne Cup with a billboard in Melbourne, sort of on the way to the racecourse, I think, that had an image of a dead horse on it, which was taken out by an anti-horse racing group. And this obviously caused a bit of a fuss with the ASB saying, well, we can't rule on that because it's a political ad. And in the end, it ended up with the actual owner of the site rather than, I think it was O Media who run and sort of put advertising in that site, but it was the actual owner of the site itself, who's a private individual, who actually took that down. Again, you know, is that a slight issue maybe for?
So that comes to the third point, which I didn't make in the last answer, which is that whole issue of freedom of speech. You know, how do you actually have natural justice and you protect a community? And in a way that the horse racing ad was a really good example of that.
Yeah.
So while you say it was of a dead horse, the horse actually looked like it was asleep. The words around it gave the information that it was dead. So if you were a child or someone who loved horses, it wasn't a shock horror ad, it was asking you a question. And I think that that's becoming more and more prevalent for us. So outdoor is being used more and more, where people are seeing it as a place where you can debate issues. You know, it's broadcasting to a lot of people, and people are wanting to ask some questions. So political advertising in Australia is in a really interesting place because no one looks at political advertising. No one will make any determination on it. There's no legislation around political advertising, and there's no rules and regulations around it. So the way we look at political advertising is we say, does it still fit under the ASB regulations? So with that horse ad, we said, well, it's not violent. It's not going to really make anyone feel uncomfortable. It's asking a question. That question is worthwhile asking. So the ASB eventually did actually have a determination on that ad because there were so many complaints about it to them, and they didn't breach it. They dismissed it. So on the rare occasion where you have this kind of confluence where that ad was sent to us, to our pre-vetting service, and we said it was fine under the regulations, so we look at it all within those guidelines. The ASB weren't willing to look at it initially because of its political nature. I think O Media made a very good statement about, you know, exactly what I said. These people have the right to put this billboard up. And in the end, it was someone outside the association who also has a right to make that decision. So, you know, you kind of have to balance a whole lot of considerations about community.
It's quite a different medium, I guess, isn't it? Because of that, where you do have a lot of stakeholders involved, and naturally it's going to, good advertising, I guess, divides opinion and makes an impact, doesn't it? So
and they, you know, in the end, and we're still talking about it, is the debate about is horse racing right or wrong. And I think it's perfectly all right in a democracy to pose those questions, as long as you're not posing those questions in a way that offends people.
Well, I guess they've made their statement in a way, and you know the ads had its effect because it reached a lot further than Melbourne and ended up reaching a lot more people. So they probably won in that respect, even though the ad was removed. We'll go to social media just for a moment now. You can, by the way, ask questions if you'd like to via the hashtag, which is AskOMA. And actually, our colleague Robin from Umbrella Asia has asked an interesting question, which I think has sort of wider-reaching connotations, actually, which is, Pyongyang has no outdoor ads. What advice would you give Kim Jong-un for how to build a reliable outdoor network? So how would North Korea go about, the communist state of North Korea, go about having a good outdoor network? And in modern world, I guess.
South, I would say, because South Korea actually has one of the most amazing outdoor networks in Asia. It's very innovative. It uses a lot of wireless technology, uses a lot of digital technology.
Yeah.
South Korea was the place where they had the first kind of supermarket where you could scan barcodes at their railway stations. So, it's close by. He doesn't have to go very far to build that network. It's already close. His neighbours have got it. But, it's really interesting asking that question, because when you look at the way propaganda is used, I bet there are billboards of him. Just like I think Fidel Castro I've seen some really great communist propaganda from Cuba, really great billboards of Che Guevara, of Fidel Castro. I think Stalin and Lenin used outdoor advertising really well. So it can be used in terms of propaganda, not just to sell.
It goes back to political advertising, right? But there are some countries or some places in the world where outdoor ads are just banned. I think there's a state in Brazil that has an embargo on them. How does that sort of fit with freedom of speech and so on? I mean, I think their argument is that it frees up the clutter and makes the the cityscape much more attractive and less sort of intimidating for their sort of residents there. So what's your response to that?
I've got a couple of responses to that. I think with that particular case, it was proliferation. And so it's a real case in point where, you have to look after your industry. You have to make sure that level of proliferation doesn't happen, where it does become an eyesore and someone goes, enough is enough. But I also think that when I talk to people who, visual clutter is used a lot, and I say, well, what do you mean by that? Usually people are talking about cluttered streetscapes. So, they're talking about, when they talk about Parramatta Road, they're not actually talking about the billboard signs, they're talking about all the other signs that have proliferated our streetscapes. But then when you ask them a secondary question and you say, so what's your favourite city? People say New York, London, Brazil, Tokyo, Paris. And then you ask the next question, which is, why do you like them? Oh, there's lights, there's colour, there's movement, there's a sense that a city exists. And, and you can see that in Australia, if you go to Canberra, Canberra's the only city where I will litter occasionally because it's so sterile. Yeah. It's just kind of so, there's nothing there to look at other than trees, which are great. And it doesn't feel like a city. It hasn't got that kind of sense of city to it. So, when you actually interrogate that thing about, what makes a city is those elements. It is that it's got graffiti, it is that it's got street art, it is that it's got advertising in it. And then when you actually start surveying people, so if you move from the glib to the more serious, what you find is people saying, yeah, look, it's something to look at. It tells me about community events. It connects me to the community that I live in. I find out about events. I know what's going on. So, yes, to some extent, if you proliferate to the point of being ridiculous, yes, it is visual clutter, but there's a way of managing that. And I think we do a really good job of that in Australia. I think when I recently was in Europe, they were still talking about the fact that they were printing on paper and that, billboard signs where no one had advertised for a while and the paper was peeling off just looked really terrible. And I kind of looked at them really shocked, because in the time that I've worked at the OMA, we haven't talked about paper. It's all on vinyl. It's all, it's all looking pretty good.
Yeah, and I guess that sort of brings us on to advancement in technology, and 10 years time, are we going to be looking back and thinking, God, remember those times that we had vinyl billboards? Is that digital seems to be coming in, and it seems to be it's obviously a big push amongst most of the big networks now to get that in and sort of bring in new technologies. I mean, does that bring its own challenges in terms of regulation and in terms of advertising as well? Because suddenly you've got movement, you've got much more almost sort of video type content that can be played. Is that an issue then for you guys to sort of look at?
It is an issue and it's not. So it's about evolution. Yeah,
Mm-hmm.
It's about the platform in which you deliver that ad, and it's moving with the times, and people are moving with the times.
Yeah.
So in the 17th century, people were painting walls, and then there was paper, and then there was vinyl, and now there's digital. I don't think that static billboards are not going to be here in 5 years' time. I still think they're going to be part of the mix, because you have to choose the right site. For digital is very expensive. It's got a shorter obsolescence period. Technology's moving really fast. But yes, the regulation has to keep up with where the delivery platforms are going, and the industry has to keep up with where the delivery platforms are going.
Right.
So while it seems like the new shiny thing, it's actually an evolution, and you break it down into the steps. And yes, we are looking at things like regulation for luminance. How bright is that light? But that's not to say that static billboards don't have light. They're backlit or they're front lit. So it's just taking that lighting notion one step further. Yeah. So for me, I don't see regulation as being something that is going to overwhelm us. And in a way, Australia is behind the 8 ball a bit. So we've learned lessons from America and the UK. Digital billboards have been around for a very long time in America. And that movement issue, we've had scrolling billboards for scrolling signs, tri-visions, for 30, 40, 50 years in Australia. So it's nothing new.
Right. So and I guess then also, there's talk of programmatic as well. And, this is where media agencies are obviously sort of heading and trying to push a lot of media owners towards, more efficient trading. And I think one of the ad networks, media brands, is setting up a programmatic for outdoor trading desk.
Yeah.
How big do you think that is as a potential area for the outdoor industry?
I think for the whole media industry, automation is the next step. And I don't actually have a feeling that it's positive or negative. It's just where it's going. It's just, again, evolution. You can't stop it. It's there, and what you have to do is work with it.
Mm-hmm.
And that's, I suppose, where we're at with it, is we just go, okay, so 5 years ago we had to develop an audience measurement system because we were the only media channel that didn't have one. And it was a big thing to do. We've got 76,000 signs that have to be measured one by one. So programmatic buying is based on a digital platform, computer to computer. We're not. We're not computer to computer. Each sign has its own value. It has its own audience. It has its own way of working in day parts. So it's a bit more complicated.
Yeah.
Because there's no cookies embedded in the computer. There's a whole lot of other thinking to be done. There's static signs, there's digital signs, there's shopping centre signs, but it's certainly not a problem that can't be resolved. And absolutely, we're going there. We have to.
I guess it leads on to the question then of growth within the industry. We've seen quite decent growth, I think. Last year it was what, 10%? What was it when you started the OMA?
Look, I think I had someone was looking after me when I joined the OMA, because I joined just as Move was launched, so I got to have all of that glory, and just at the end of the global financial crisis. So the industry had gone down, and I've been at the industry while it's grown.
Mhm.
You know,
But still the question is,
Yeah.
5 years ago, what was the
yeah,
share?
I think it was we were at 400 million, and 5 years on we're at 600 million. Market share's probably grown from 3.5 to about 5%. But we've got new inventory, we've got new digital stock. It's not as if you're comparing like with like. The industry has moved on as well. But I have to say, out of all of the kind of industries to be in, outdoor would be the best in terms of traditional media, because that growth it kind of makes sense, where technology has really affected other traditional media models. It's enhanced us. It's absolutely given us the ability to broadcast content. It's given us the ability to day part. It's given us the ability to really use creative in new ways. It's given us data aggregation, all kinds of things that we didn't have before. So I think the growth is, yes, Move absolutely helped that growth. Yes, the growth in the industry has been propelled by it, but it's also the fact that it's probably the last truly remaining broadcast channel. So while other traditional media channels have fragmented, we've been able to pick up some of that fragmentation. In fact, if you really wanted me to talk about it in truth, I think we should have grown more than we have. I'm actually disappointed with our growth.
Right. And why is that?
Well, I think that it's about education and breaking habits. It's about actually looking at the way people buy and what out of home can do in order to sell better. So I think we need to move a bit faster. We need to be a bit more nimble. We need to actually sell how well our channel works in this new media paradigm.
And you mentioned earlier that technologically Australia might have been a bit behind the 8 ball from US and UK, which is a cry we hear of many different media sectors in Australia. Where are we now then? Are we up to speed, do you think, or is there still a lot more work to be done? And then with agencies, how's that sales story going in terms of actually getting them to move more of that spend and think more creatively around the medium here as well?
Yeah, I don't know whether we've caught up. I think government regulation is still an issue in Australia. I think that while governments are still timid about digital networks, certainly for our channel, I can't talk about other channels, we will be slightly behind the 8 ball. I think we're catching up, but I don't think that the regulation is open enough for us to just jump into it. I think with agencies and with media operators, I think it's a symbiotic relationship in a way. I think we could have more evidence base for how well we do as a channel. And I think, yes, agencies could look at it slightly differently. And I think it's up to us really to say, look, the formula has changed. They all know that, but it's then how do you actually make that leap? It is a leap. And I think we're on the way to that. So, we're very ambitious. We hope to be $1 billion industry within the next 3 years. And that's what our challenge is to convince the people who are buying us how good the channel is.
Yeah, I mean, that's a big leap as well, isn't it? 3 years, sort of adding another 400 million on the back of that. Where's that money going to come from, do you think? What sectors do you think that people are going to be looking to outdoor to sort of augment that from?
Well, what we're hoping is to get more of a share of budgets. So, when people say to me, what should we spend on outdoor? The kind of research that we're doing around it is 20% or above. And certainly that's not currently what people are spending on outdoor. So that's where that growth is going to come from. And of course it's going to come from other channels. It has to come from somewhere. It's not just the media part growing, but it's also, and I do think that other traditional media channels have fragmented, and where else can you say we get 90% of Australians every day? We know that 90% of Australians leave home every day, and we are everywhere. So we are broadcasting to a lot of people.
Yeah, and so I guess then leave it open for people to say, well, TV obviously is not the mass reach medium that perhaps it once was, and seems to be more declining. Is that then your argument? You go in and say TV's TV's having a hard time. We can fill that gap. We can give you that reach.
Or we can work with TV. I don't think that any channel in this kind of media market can say our channel alone is the only channel to use. I think that people are far more savvy, and you need to get them on the journey. You need to get them along the way. And I think out of home and TV work very well together. What I suppose I'm advocating for is that we get more of that budget, that there is a better split of that budget, not that TV shouldn't have any of it, but that for me, there are 3 media channels if you want to get people along that journey, and it's outdoor, TV, and online. And then you've got it.
Right.
And now my colleagues in every other association are
we like to cause a bit of a divide every now and then. In terms of creativity, then I guess because that's also a big sort of sticking point. I think for a lot of people, we see some fantastic outdoor ads globally. Where are we in Australia? In terms of creativity and in terms of compared to other places in the world.
Well, an outdoor ad won Cannes last year, the ATMs. So we're not slouches in this area. I think that it's really improving, and I think that we are wanting to help that improvement. So the OMA board has taken a very strong view that what we'll do is lead by example. So we've published 2 books now on great outdoor creative in Australia and overseas, and our second Open Squared, which was our second book on outdoor creative, had a lot more Australian creative in it. And I think that as advertisers start to look at the channel as a channel in its own right that's broadcasting and actually put some money and time and thinking into an outdoor ad, rather than just saying, oh, here is my print ad, I'm going to blow it up and put it on outdoor, you will see better and better creative. And I think, in the end, it's the ROI and the ads that anecdotally, and I don't have the evidence for this because we haven't done a lot of research in this area, but what I hear is ads in Australia that have humour, that really talk to the target market, that use outdoor well, are the ones that are successful. And that's the great thing about capitalism. It's driven by the market, and if the market is asking for something to be upgraded, it's going to be upgraded.
And let's talking of upgrading, you've got the Move system now. It's been there for 5 years. I know it's been sort of some changes along the way. Is there more on the way with that? Are you looking at any sort of other improvements to that? And what are media buyers asking you in that respect?
Yeah. Automation is one of the things that the MFA is asking for, and I think I get why they're asking for it, and I think we have to deliver it. So I think where we're at is that Move gave us that really strong foundation of reach and frequency. It gave us a whole lot of data sets that made it very clear to us that the things that we've been saying about our channel were true. Yeah, it proved a whole lot of stuff that we were saying, trust me, I suppose, before. So we have to go to the next level. And what is really great for me is I feel as if Move's got that really solid foundation that we can build on. And I can't talk about this a lot because we're about to make an announcement in the next few weeks, but where we're going next is using that foundation as a stepping stone to go into the next arena, and it's a big leap forward.
Right, so that'll be coming in the next few weeks, will it?
Yeah, it'll be coming in the next few weeks, and the next time you interview me, I'll be a lot grayer and looking a little bit more haggard. Because it's big, you know, it's because outdoor is so unique because it's each individual sign. You know, Move was Herculean to get all of that data into the system, but we've got that data, we've done that. So the next stage is going to be kind of taking that somewhere else.
Right.
Watch this space.
Watch this space. Well, that's probably a great place to leave it for today. We've taken up probably enough of your time, but Charmaine, thanks very much